So today we're going to end up doing my final end of the month reading journal. So I'm starting out right away with filling in this one little section that I left blank from last time from my mid-month check-in because I didn't have a book to fill in this little section. So this one is The Magician's Nephew. It's a book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. I've never read the Chronicles of Narnia, and so I've kind of like all of my reading things, I've never read it, so I'm going to read it now. It's something that I feel like I should have read. I don't know why. I've never watched like the Chronicles of Narnia movies. I've seen like the first Lion, Witch, the Wardrobe, and that was pretty much it. So in this first book, I thought it was a really good book for setting up the rest of the series. I think obviously it's meant for a much younger reader than I am, but I still found it funny and interesting to read. It sets up the universe of Narnia really nicely, and so I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how things develop more and seeing what happens with these characters and like this family. It's very interesting. Also, I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So now we're going to my whole year bookshelf. This whole spread really annoys me. I was doing all of these before I had like markers that wouldn't bleed through the pages. So it doesn't look great. And then the green that I was using for physical books, I just have lost that pen. I can't find it. And I even like put the number for which pen it would be in my little key, and I lost it. And so like after those first 5 books up there, the green just changes color because I just didn't have it. I didn't have the green, and so I had to try and find a different thing to replace it. So yeah, this is the first time that I'm trying filling in the book types first, and I was really nervous that I was gonna mess it up, and spoiler, I did. I thought I did a great job, and I thought I was doing so good at keeping track of how many books I needed, and then I did it wrong. I only messed up one, but I was doing this because a lot of the times I'll write the title first and then color it in, and it makes it really like smeary, and it doesn't look very pretty. But then doing it this way, it made it where it was really hard to write the titles. So I don't really know what's the best method, or if I just need to end up using like different markers. I don't know. I guess that'll be my test for next month. But also, if you can tell, this is for the end of the month, March, and it sure looks like I do not have very many books left on my bookshelf. For some reason, when I was first making this spread, I thought I had so many books on here, and my goal for reading for this year is 100 books. And so I was like, oh yeah, this is like 100 books, if not more. This is going to be more than enough for the year. And it will not be enough for even like half the year. But that's fine. I at least know for next year, and I might be able to figure out a way that I can maybe draw in more bookshelves somehow. I don't know. I'm sure I can figure out some sort of way that I can do something, or I can just start doing it again like halfway through the year and just make a new bookshelf. Maybe I can do it seasonally. That would be nice. Here you can see I'm starting to write in the titles of the books, and if you can tell, my pen, it's just like not quite as pigmented as the other ones. You can't really tell, but it's not as pure black as it is in other times. So that's I think I end up switching pens. Maybe I don't remember. But yeah, so the pink, if you can read up top, the pink means it's an ebook. The blue ones mean they're an audiobook, and then the green ones are a physical book. I used to be like exclusively a physical and ebook reader, and I used to think that I just like could not read audiobooks because I never could keep my attention on them, and I would be listening to them and just like 10 minutes would go by and I'd be like, wait, what happened? Because I just couldn't listen. And then my coworkers, they talked about how they read their books at a faster speed, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should try that. And I turned my books faster, and like that's all I needed to do. It just wasn't fast enough for my brain to comprehend it. So now I just listen to books all the time at work, and it is great because instead of being bored, I can listen to books, and I prefer that so much more. So yeah, so this is my little book calendar so far. So here is just my big pages of reading goals. For this, I just literally covered the page with as many squares as I could. I don't know if I'll end up reaching the 200 books. I read more now than I think I expected to. I really only started picking up reading again after I gave birth to my son. And even then, it was like months after. It was like right before I went back to work. So the end of 2024. And I've always been a really fast reader, but I've always exclusively read physical books or ebooks. And now that like audiobooks are more of a thing and they're way more popular, and I finally figured out how to listen to them, I genuinely have no idea how many books I can listen to in a year. So maybe I will get close to 264, who knows? On to my reading stats page. This page looks so bad, but I'm such a data-driven person that I really wanted a page that was just like strictly data. Maybe next year I can figure out how to make one that's prettier. This is also my first attempt at ever having a reading journal. I watched so many videos of it online, and I just desperately wanted to, I've wanted to do one. I think it's so cool to have like the visuals of everything, and that helps me remember things a lot more than just like seeing my book on the shelf. So this was my recounting of the month stats. You'll see like one of the things that I have a little section for manga read. I really want to read more manga this year, but so far I haven't read like any, which is disappointing. And then rereads. I'd like to really reread books this year, like classics and new. And then I don't know what happened with my camera. I didn't discover it until like just now, but I totally moved my camera out of focus, which is frustrating. But this is one of my daily reading trackers. I didn't necessarily have like a goal for reading daily. I'd like to be reading at least like 4 to 5 times a week. You can see that the more the months have gone on, the less consistent I've been with my reading, which I expected. I mean, that's how it happens. January always like you're so into reaching your goals and everything, and then you'll slowly drop off. I think also I'm in classes, and so it makes it a little difficult to like read every single day, even if I want to, because I have homework, and then I have my son, and then I work. So it's hard to get a moment to read every day, especially on the weekends. And then my genre tracker, I don't track a single genre for each book. I track whatever genre that book has listed with it. So like if it's a fantasy romance, I have a box for fantasy and romance. So there's gonna be more boxes in this section than there is gonna be like actual books I've read. But that's kind of the point of it for me. I want to see what categories or like what genres I'm most attracted to, and I think I like am fairly aware of which ones I like. It's obviously going to be fantasy and romance. I've always really preferred fantasy and romance, but I do like sci-fi as well. And then I love manga, but I don't know why it's so hard for me to read any, or why I have so few, but that is one of the goals for the year, is to read more. But yeah, I think I have a fairly decent array of different genres. The one for other is literally any other genre that isn't listed on there. So like if it says sports, it gets listed on other. And then these are my new releases in A to Z challenge. I don't think I'll do that next year. I don't really have a point of tracking new releases because they just arrive and then I go, oh, okay, I have them. And this book bracket and the rereading matrix for March, it was Deep End is my preferred. Oh, and the series tracker. I finished 2 more of the Throne of Glass series in March, so I get to fill out 2 more. Obviously, I've not made like much progress on anything else. And then my book bucket list. I just wanted to try and have something to like diversify the things I'm reading. So here I got 500 plus pages. This was a nonfiction. And then I did a 5-star prediction, I believe is that one. That one is a black cover. And then white cover. And then another cover by. And then I had another nonfiction, so then I filled in that one as well. And so now we're moving on to my actual book reviews of this month. The first one I'm reviewing is Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. I've read some of the poems from Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass over the years, but never like the whole collections at once. Actually, growing up in elementary school, we had these like monthly presentations where everyone in the class had to memorize one of the poems and present it in front of the whole class after memorizing it. And everybody would present the same poem and everything. And so reading Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, there's quite a few of them that I recognize from those like presentations growing up that I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. One of the ones I was actually really surprised. It's one of the poems from Through the Looking Glass, but I had always thought it was with the original Alice in Wonderland. And I don't know if there's like maybe different editions where everything is lumped together in Alice in Wonderland, but of the ones I read, it was the walrus one in the Through the Looking Glass. But I really enjoyed reading the Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. I was kind of surprised at how much, not necessarily calmer, but how much less eccentric the characters behaved in the actual writing as they're depicted in like modern day movies. Because I feel like in movies they're shown as being like so over the top and so eccentric, and it felt like in the writing they weren't necessarily that overtly crazy. They obviously like have their quirks and they're very unique and they have a very like specific way of behaving, but I didn't feel like it was as eccentric as our movies make them out to be. So it was kind of fun to listen to that. I believe I ended up rating Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass as a 3. Just, they're enjoyable, but it's not like they were anything that I'm gonna like want to go back to. But I mean, it's something that I'll probably read to my kids. Like it would be fun to read to them someday. And so here I'm building one of my like mini review sections. A lot of the times I'll just read single books, and so I'll make these little boxes to just keep track of the single books, because they're not necessarily ones that I cared enough about to make actually like a whole spread, or it just kind of feels like a waste to make a whole spread for a single book unless I really, really liked it. So the first book is The Prophet. I've not heard of The Prophet before. I don't know if it's something that I should have heard before, but I hadn't. It was just a free quick book on Audible that I ended up seeing and was like, okay, I'll give it a try. It seems fine. And so I was listening to it and I enjoyed it. I went to go look at the reviews of it afterwards just to kind of get a better picture of like why people want to read it. And a lot of people were saying how there were so many different parts of it that were like guiding and life mantras for them. And I didn't really take any part of it away like that. I thought it was a really pleasant read. I thought it was really nice to listen to. Overall, it was well written, but it wasn't anything that I was like, wow, this is a way I want to live my life. This is something that I will take with me. It was just pleasant. So yeah, I'll probably read it again in a couple years and enjoy it, and maybe I'll find something that speaks to me more then than it does now. But yeah, for now I just found it to be a really pleasant read. I give it, I think, a 5 out of 5. There was nothing wrong with it. It was pleasant, it was quick, and I enjoyed it. And then the second book is Art of War. This year I'm really wanting to try and read more classics. And Art of War is a book that I hear about all the time. It's obviously a very classic book. And I read a lot of fantasy books that tend to have either like army scenes or war time antics in them. And so I figured, if anything, it'll help me kind of understand the psychology of if the ways the characters are behaving are actually applicable for the scenes. And I feel like a lot of it is pretty, if you understand basic psychology, I feel like a lot of it is pretty understandable. It's not really anything too crazy, but it did offer a lot of perspectives that were interesting, and I'll definitely keep in mind in my future readings. Okay, so then this whole spread is going to be for the whole rest of the Deals with Demons series from Stacia Stark. I read the first book in the first half of the month, and then I read the last 5 books of the series in the second half. If you can't tell, I'm a person who tends to just consume series. So if like a whole series is available, I tend to just devour all of it at once if I like it enough, or like if it's in this case I didn't necessarily enjoy the writing that much and like the quality of the books, but it had a lot of lore and world building that I just really wanted to know the answers more. I just wanted to know more about it. I wanted to experience more of the world, more of the creatures, more of their interactions, and so I read more. But I didn't necessarily enjoy the author's writing, so it was a little frustrating at times because I just was so annoyed at the main character. So the first book in the series I had given a 2.5 because, again, I really liked the world building, I liked the lore, but the plot and the writing just was not it for me. And so with the second book, Dance with the Demons, I ended up giving it a 2. I was really disappointed. I had a lot of hope that it would get better, and it just didn't. The writing was just so lackluster for how fun and intricate the world was, and how many different fae and how many different like supernatural beings there are, and like the conflict with all of them and the different opinions they had of each other. It could have been so interesting. And the author, she just has this way of writing that makes the action parts extremely inactive. So she doesn't really do a great job of having the characters do things. She says what they do, which is, in my opinion, just a sign of bad writing. But again, the lore is so good that I wanted to read more of it. But anyways, there is a lot of different like big and important parts of the plot in this second book that I was left being like, oh, that's it? Like there isn't more? Which is kind of frustrating. And then the main character, she's so aggravating and off-putting and harsh to other characters, but then everyone just like wants to do things for her, which doesn't line up for the way she behaves. She's so like rude, and everyone is just like, oh, I'll do this for you, that's great, like I'm just doing it for you out of the kindness of my heart because I think you're awesome, which is not how people would react. She was so mean to them. But anyways, another part of it is this is the book where they start introducing some spice, and I have to say it was literally the worst I have ever read. It just, you can tell it was written by a woman, but if you've ever read like a male written spice book, there's a specific way they write the spice in that book where it's just like, and I did it and it was great and I came. And that's how it was in this book, which was weird. I don't know. It was like, it wasn't valid for what was going on. It was like, he touched me and I was done. I don't know. It was just weird. I genuinely was skipping past most of it. Unless it was like a point where I just couldn't be at my phone and then I had to. listen. But otherwise, I did not enjoy it. So for book 2, Dance with the Demons, I gave it a 2-star. And then for the third book, Inner Demons, I gave it a 1.5 star. It was worse, which I don't even know how I managed to push all the way through the whole series. The third book was so bad. Kind of a spoiler, but the last quarter of the book became really, really, really exciting. But the first 3/4 of the book were so slow and monotonous. And then at the very, very end of the book, it just ends with a fucking to-do list. Like, Samael is becoming a literal ash crust. And Danica goes, "To do, save Samael, find my mom's murderer." And I literally had a rage fit. I got so angry. It was the most stupid writing I have ever had to witness. And again, this was more of the book where I was starting to realize that the author talks about a lot more of the action than showing it. So yeah, it's just not good. Oh, and then another thing, it was a lot of if you read a lot of short stories that they're part of a series, but they kind of come out where they can be read independently, you'll know the way in which they introduce the town or the area or the premises of the book, whatever it is, the history of whatever area they're in, where they kind of present it in a similar way every single time and slightly different variations. She does that with these books, except these are full-length books. There's no need to do it that way. So yeah, I really did not like this book. It was really bad. But I continued onwards and I read the 4th book, Luck of the Demons. And this one, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. It got way better. And I don't know if it's because the author was writing more in a fantasy-based landscape instead of in a modern-day detective kind of landscape like she was doing in the previous books. But I think it helps her have a lot more freedom with what she does, and she can write better. Writing exclusively modern day, she does not do a good job. I really would prefer to never read anything that she does from a modern day perspective ever, because it was just horrible. But when she writes in kind of a fantasy based scape, it's a lot better. So the 4th book was a huge improvement. It was a 3 out of 5. And then the final book, Demon's Advocate, was the best out of the series so far. It was a 4 out of 5. And I thought it was a really good finale for Danica and Samael's storyline. There was definitely a lot of different plot points that were way overplayed, but it genuinely was the best book of the series. Again, it'll be spoilers, but in the last battle, there's all of these different moments where there's these different characters that she's helped along the way or saved that start coming back one by one, and it's when it's the penultimate moment of the battle and everything's against them and they're not going to win, and then all these characters start coming back with their whole armies one by one, and it starts turning the tide. If you've paid attention at all in the previous books, you had to have known they were coming. There's no reason that she was helping out a dwarf in one book and spending a whole book helping him out for him to not come back at this moment. It's just obvious. So that was it should have been impactful and emotional, but it's just, what else would the purpose of having her do all of this for those characters be, But otherwise, there was a lot of parts at the end that really had me tearing up, and I was crying a little. So it made it worth it. All of the horrible, horrible books that were before then made the ending worth it, at least, because the lore was really good, but the writing was really bad. So please don't read this series. It's not worth it. It's not good. But if you have nothing else to read, it's fine. And then the 6th book, Play the Demon, is a offshoot story. It's mainly focusing on Boss and kind of his romance that he gets, and it kind of finishes out the plot line. This made me realize that I might just hate Danica. I might just hate how her character is, because I did not mind the female main character in this book, but I hated Danica. So I think Danica was just an insufferable character for me. I could not tolerate her. And I really liked this a lot. It was really nice to get kind of like a finale for Voss, and you really start to connect him and get invested in him in the rest of the series. So getting to have like a final moment and getting him to have his love, it was really rewarding. So that one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. So the next 2 that I read, or listened to, I guess, are 2 kind of like mini lectures on Audible that are from Great Courses. Growing up, my stepdad actually used to get me like different learning courses from the Great Courses, and one of the doctors at my work, he'll buy different learning courses from the Great Courses too. So I was really like excited to see that there were these ones on Audible. So the first one that I listened to, it's called Teenage Wastelands, A Guide to Dystopian Young Adult Fiction. And it's basically just this little course that explains the different tropes of young adult fiction. So a lot of the subgenres. And I really enjoyed getting to listen to this because it covered so many of the young adult dystopian books that I grew up reading. So it was like The Hunger Games, Divergent series. I even mentioned The Giver. I love The Giver, the whole Louis Lowry series. It's so good. And it was really fun to be able to dissect these somewhat obvious kind of subgenres of young adult fiction, dystopian fiction, but it was still interesting to read nonetheless. So I ended up giving it a 4 stars. And so then the second one I listened to, it's called Brand Yourself for Success. This one, again, I thought it was really interesting. I thought it had a lot of good points. If you've ever listened to any sort of podcast or any sort of video kind of explaining the things you need to build your own brand, this one really doesn't have any new information for you. It's pretty standard advice. Find a niche, how to pick your qualities, things like that. And if you've listened to any podcast about how to build your brand, you're gonna have heard it before. But a lot of the things that I found really helpful and things that I'll probably end up referring to this again is the advice it had for advancing your career and kind of like having there be individual career moments or mentor moments that you can use to kind of build your relationships career-wise and going forward. And so that was an aspect that I found really, really helpful. I'm working in the medical field, and so it is something that it's not like solely based off of reputation and kind of the relationships you get with other people, but a lot of the times, especially with doctors, it's easy to get specific relationships, and a lot of them can help benefit you and be a person that you can refer back to for guidance or knowledge. So I think that aspect was super helpful for me. Okay, and so then the next book is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. It's the first ever Ali Hazelwood book that I've read, and I was pretty excited for this book. I really like sports romances so far. Most of the sports romances I've read are hockey romance, and I have loved hockey since I was a child, so that's just kind of a niche. But this one seemed like it would be one that I would find really interesting. It's about this college romance between the characters Scarlett, who is a diver, and then Lucas, who is a swimmer. And Lucas is Swedish, and I'm a Norwegian and American dual citizen. So honestly, any book that has a Swedish or Norwegian character, I usually will grab, if not just to make fun of how they characterize Scandinavians. I just enjoy it. It automatically makes me want to pick it up. But then also, I was drawn to this book because of the genre of spice. It's definitely up my alley. And I think of all the books I've read so far that have spice, I've not read any books that have spice until this year because I didn't know that there were books like this that weren't for grandmas. And so of the books that I've found so far, this definitely has like the most up my alley. So I had a good time reading this book. I really loved it. I kept getting butterflies from how Scarlett was able to heal and how the two characters were able to like grow and show comfortability, both with like their preferences and with each other, and just being able to just kind of express themselves. I really enjoyed that. The only thing that I was annoyed with is the ex-girlfriend / like friend Pen. She was kind of annoying at the end, but then there were parts that made it make sense, but it was just the ending felt a little rushed, and it didn't seem like the way everything is handled with Penelope really made sense. So I would have really preferred to have like either her just be totally bitchy, because I feel like that made more sense, other than like her kind of like being mean and like fucking over Scarlett and Lucas, and then just like being forgiven. Felt a little cheated because I wanted to experience more of the relationship of them publicly dating, Lucas and Scarlett. But otherwise, yeah, I really love this book. I thought it was amazing. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. If you know any other books that kind of have the same like kind of spice, like the dom sub kind of stuff, I would love the recommendations. Okay, so then this last spread is the Plated Prisoner series. So I ended up reading the whole series from start to end this month. And when I was making the spread, I did a lot of things kind of different than I've done in previous spreads. I think I was just kind of getting bored after making a lot of them, and I'm feeling a little more comfortable to just fuck around and see what things are fun, and if they look bad, it's fine. It's just arts and crafts. It can be whatever way it looks. So I've been trying to do a lot more texture, and this was so hard because it was like I wanted to incorporate the dark from Slade with the raw power, and then obviously the gold from Arin, but I don't want there to be like obnoxious gold. So yeah, I ended up with this like kind of like creamy beigey colors, and then I incorporated a lot of like birds and like flowers and then books, because I don't know, it just felt like the vibes of Arin and Slade, and I don't know, it just felt right. So in terms of the series, definitely have kind of mixed feelings about it. So I'll just start with the first book. So the first book is Guild, and I really enjoyed this book. There were definitely parts where I felt like it was a little more vague than it needed to be, but coming from Arin's POV, it definitely made sense to have things be more restrained and timid and kind of like hesitant to actually speak truly than I would have preferred. But like, because she's so traumatized and scared, it makes sense. I did really appreciate the way that her character was written, and even though she was very like traumatized and timid, she still stood up when necessary. She still like has the moral to stand up and do that. I think a lot of the times you don't really see female main characters that are like that, or at least like are believably like that. I think a lot of the times they'll just like get the strength to stand up and it doesn't really align with the character, but this one it did. It felt like it was a very consistent moments where she would be defending others or doing actions to protect others. When I was reading the first book, I could pretty easily tell where some of the big reveals were going to be heading later on, but it was still a really interesting premise. I really loved it. So yeah, I gave the first book a 4 out of 5. And then moving on to the second book, Glint. Again, I really liked this one. I liked being able to explore more POVs than the first one. And I think it also did a pretty good job at exploring these tropes in a different way that already exists, like the sharing a tent, kind of like unaware that they're falling in love. The found family, the like harsh leader, kind friend kind of tropes, you know. It did a really good job at setting up the next few books. And it also like really naturally got you invested in all these different characters without being like, love them, you know. It just like very organically showed you these characters and like who they are. Then yeah, the cliffhanger, the ending, it made me immediately jump onto the next book. Like, that's a ridiculous spot to end. I can't imagine having to wait for the next book to come out. I'm so glad I read this like when the whole series was out, because I just know I would have gone wild if I had to end the book at the Ravager Rip Slade reveal and then like had to wait for like at least a year for the next book to come out. No, that's ridiculous. That's so crazy. I could never. I would have gone mad. So Glint, I gave a 4 out of 5 again. And then onto the third book, Gleam. This one, holy shit. I was not expecting so many different parts of this book. I felt like it was pretty easy to catch hints of what was going on, but I didn't know the various ways that it would pan out. So like I kind of caught hints about like the queen's power to listen was going to be used for something mind-blowing. And then like the way Midas was talking about Digby through the book, I knew something wild was going to happen with him. I knew it was going to be either like he came back or like Digby was really like on Midas's side and was like doing something with that, but no. And then there's all sorts of other things. They panned out so well that I did not expect it. At the beginning of the book, I definitely was pretty doubtful because it kind of seemed still like Auron didn't completely understand how evil Midas was, but like, wow, he only got worse. The last 10 of the chapters like literally had me on the edge of my seat needing to finish it because of everything being revealed, and then like the ending was ridiculous. I again immediately needed to move on to the next book. So Gleam, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. And then Glow, again, I felt like Glow did a really good job at what it needed to do in the series. It concluded kind of like the plot lines from the first 3 books, where it's the King Midas and then Auron using her power to be king, like turning things gold and using it to play as King Midas, not play as him, but give him power when he really doesn't have any other than his words. And it was able to initiate plot lines to be kind of the main plot for the last 2 books, and it really made sense. The ending also like fucking rocked me. I knew that the ending was going to be horrible at the conclave, and I was fully expecting there to be like some sort of way that Auron would figure out how to get out of it, how she would like maybe a different power would get awakened or something. I just, in my heart, I was like, she's gonna figure out how to get out of it. But the rot started leaking out of Auron. I knew she was absolutely fucked. I was just like, I was at work reading it and that part came up and I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. There's no fucking way. That's so, no, she's fucked. She's just gonna be fucking killed. Like, they're just gonna kill her. And then everything that was happening with Slade, where he couldn't reach her, and then making the other rip, I was like, oh, okay. They're gonna be able to get to the, like, she's gonna be going home. Okay. And yeah, I think the book did a great job at setting up what it needs to for the next 2 books, which is obviously it's going to be going back to the Fae realm and kind of concluding the plot there, because that's been slightly built up in the first few books, and that really is like the final plot. She's been referencing needing to go back home to the Fae land, to that area calling for her. So yeah, I thought this book did a great job. I gave it a 4.5 stars. And then onto Glow. I was kind of disappointed by this book in comparison to the rest of the series. I found the first half of the book to be way more interesting than the last half, which has been the complete opposite experience that I've had so far. Most of the other books, I thought that the first half or first 3/4 of the book were not really as good as the last half or quarter of the book. But this one, it was definitely the opposite. I feel like Raven Kennedy is always like ramping up her writing in the last third and brings like so many unpredictable twists. But this was the first time that I was like easily predicting all of those huge twists almost exactly as they played out within like the first quarter of the book. So when it got to them, I was like pretty disappointed because it was like pretty obvious that they were gonna happen. And it was disappointing that like they happened exactly like I imagined it, especially since like throughout the rest of the series, she's been really great at kind of like making it something unpredictable for me. So yeah, there was only one thing that came as a surprise, and it was the very last chapter. But that wasn't even like actually that surprising. I just didn't think it was going to happen yet. So yeah, I gave Gold a 3.5. And then Goldfinch was easily the biggest disappointment. Honestly, in this whole series, I feel like it just like really peaked at book 3, and then the last 3 books I've just been enjoying less and less. It seemed like in this book where it's like it's all of these things that should have been so difficult. It's been like this king that the rest of the realm has been unable to even touch, and he's just like defeated so easily. And then Slade's father was dealt with so easily too, that I was just disappointed. It just seemed like all of it got resolved with very little effort, and it made it seem like it just didn't match with the way the rest of it had been built up in the rest of the books. When the Stone King was killed, I was like, what? Okay, so there has to be like a twist, because like how did he kill him so easily? And like no Fae has been able to kill him, but he managed to kill him that fast, like that easily? What? And then yeah, with Slade's dad, because it ended so easily and so fast, I felt like so cheated, because his dad is horrible. I wanted there to be like horrible things done to him because it just felt right. But then it didn't, and I just felt cheated. It really felt like she ran out of steam hard through the book. So yeah, if I was to read the series again, I probably would just stop reading at the first 3 books, because the last 3 weren't really worth it. Maybe I would read the 4th book, but definitely not the 5th or 6th, because it just wasn't worth it. It was just disappointing. So yeah, Goldfinch, I ended up rating a 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, so then it's on to doing my March wrap-up stat page. I ended up using a lot of the same papers as I did for my March TBR page, or I think it might have been my March book club TBR page. I really like that it looks like a Celtic kind of herb book. It looks like a book that I would find in like Kingdom Come. So yeah, obviously I was going for that like St. Patrick's Day kind of earthy vibes. Okay, so these little stickers are some stats that I print off from Storygraph. At the end of the month, I upload all of the different books and my ratings onto Storygraph, and it makes these really nice charts. And that's where I like get all of my different genres and everything too, is from Storygraph. So yeah, if you don't use Storygraph, I would really recommend it. It's like one of the few apps that I think are really good for analyzing the books you read, and kind of, as a person who really likes data, it's really helpful for me. So then here's to some of my actual stats of the month. I ended up reading 25 books for all 31 of the days. It's not really like a goal that I have that I'm like, I want to finish a book for every day of the month, but like I enjoy it. And then the other one is I had 3 physical books that I read. I really need to get through my physical books, so I want to like emphasize every month how many I read. And then the last one is how many of my TBR books I actually ended up reading. And obviously you can see I only read 3 of the 28 books. I had classes, and I'm gonna be honest, reading a lot of those books are physical books, and so reading them were just not a priority to me. And so then this part, it's something new that I'm wanting to record in my stats, and it's just I'm wanting to record my 5 stars and my like least favorite books of the month, because I feel like I only get to choose one of the books as my favorite for my like book bracket, and I end up liking a lot of books. So for this month, I ended up having 5 that were the best reads. It was Dumbledore, Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, Deep End, and then Gleam. And then I have my worst reads, and the wonderful books, I should say, that got to be the worst reads of the month were Inner Demons and Goldfinch. So unfortunately, they won the worst category. Okay, and then for this page, I'm setting up my April TBR page. And so I was kind of going on the vibes of April showers, and then May would be May flowers. And so it kind of ended up being more of like a pastel-y purple blue vibe for April showers, kind of like a sunset-y shower. I don't know. But it felt like the right vibes for me. And then I've never like set up a book journal like this way. Obviously this is my first ever book journal, but like this isn't a pattern that I normally would be inclined to do it as. So I was kind of intrigued to just test it. Who knows? This whole setup was kind of different than what I'm normally inclined to do. Obviously I like ripping the edges and having a lot of texture. And this one I basically kept all of the pages intact. And so it's a lot of like sharp edges. And then with the stickers, they're all like circular stickers, or they're like brush stroke stickers. And I kind of liked the way it turned out. I don't know if it's my favorite, but I thought it was interesting. So yeah, I thought it was pretty fun. Okay, so now you get to see the wonder of me not learning from any of my previous overloaded TBRs that like maybe I should just chill out and not put as many on my physical, or I guess this isn't just my physical TBR, it's just my TBR in general. So yeah, I haven't learned yet, and I probably won't learn for a decent amount of time. I think it's mainly my reading habits differ so much month to month, and it also just so heavily depends on how much schoolwork I have. So like if I have a lot of schoolwork that I can do easily, I can read a lot more physical books, or if I'm just like desperate to read the book. And a lot of these, I have this thing where if it's a book I know I'm going to enjoy, I want to read it on a physical book first because it's easier for me to catch all of the details. But I'm kind of learning that I can catch most of the details while listening to the audiobook, and then I can go back and read the physical book if I really, really like want to, which a lot of these books I will want to go back and read again, like especially the Sarah J. Maas books. So on here I put the last books of the Throne of Glass series, so Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and then Kingdom of Ash, because I've started Empire of Storms and I just want to finish it. I want to finish the series. I know I'm gonna love it, but I know it's also gonna like break my heart. So I think, yeah, I want to finish it. And then there's also the way I choose my books is I have the series that I want to be reading, or like another series that I want to read. So like I have the Throne of Glass series, and then because the Sunrise on the Reaping is the new book that came out, I want to reread The Hunger Games. It's been years since I've read it. I haven't even read the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, so I want to reread the whole series and then get that book out of the way. So then that ended up being a series on my TBR. And then the rest of the books, I do this thing where at the beginning of every month, I go to my Alexa and I ask her to pick a number between 1 and however many books are on my physical TBR. And I just keep picking a book. So like if I go like, hey, Alexa, choose a number between 1 and 333, and she chooses 56, I choose the 56th book on my bookshelf. And then I'll say, choose a number between 57 and 333. And I just basically go until I reach the end of my bookshelf, or wherever I think is a reasonable part of my bookshelf. So yeah, that's basically how I choose most of these books. So I probably should do smarter choices, but for me it kind of works because I have the main series that I'm wanting to read, so I will achieve those, and then the rest of the books are ones that like I can really pick between, because I'm not that good at looking at the books on my bookshelf and like deciding which ones I want. But this kind of system works for me. It just ends up being like 20 more books than I'll end up reading, which is fine, but yeah. Okay, and then so for my April reading, I didn't end up drawing a calendar for March, and I really regretted it. I kind of like having a full calendar that shows me the reading I've done of the month, so like how long it took me to finish a certain book, and I think it's really satisfying. My issue was just with my January one, I didn't have nearly enough space to write which books. So I was making sure that for this spread, I ended up having the calendar fully on the right, and then I'll have space to write which books on the left, which hopefully that'll work well for me. Okay, so that is it for all of the March pages of my reading journal. I hope you enjoyed being able to look at the stuff that I made this month. There was quite a few ones that I had a fun time, even if I didn't necessarily enjoy the books that much. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching.